G20 के लोकाचार पर आधारित दुनिया में शांति की संस्कृति को बढ़ावा देने के लिए विज्ञान, धर्म और तत्वज्ञान की अनूठी तथा ऐतिहासिक 9वीं वैश्विक संसद वाराणसी के श्री काशी विश्वनाथ धाम कॉरिडोर में आयोजित की गई थी। सर्वश्रेष्ठ वैज्ञानिक और आध्यात्मिक ज्ञान तथा तत्व ज्ञान को एक साथ लाते हुए शांति तथा सद्भावना की संस्कृति को बढ़ावा देने और एक शांति प्रिय समग्र वैश्विक समाज का विकास करने के तरीकों पर इन 3 दिवसीय संसद में चर्चा हुई। काशी में आने वाले तीर्थयात्रियों तथा भक्तों की आसान आवाजाही के लिए प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी द्वारा बनाए गए काशी विश्वनाथ कॉरिडोर को विश्वधर्मी प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर विश्वनाथ कराट जी ने काशी विश्वनाथ ज्ञान कॉरिडोर का रूप दे दिया और यहीं पर संपन्न हुई विज्ञान, धर्म और तत्वज्ञान को समर्पित 9वीं वैश्विक संसद। अपने उद्घाटन और अध्यक्षीय भाषण में राज्यसभा सांसद पद्म भूषण डॉक्टर करण सिंह जी ने कहा कि समय की मांग है एक नया वैश्विक समाज, एक नई चेतना, एक नए स्तर की जागरूकता और एक नई मानव सभ्यता।
गंगा तरंग रमणीय जटाकलापम गौरी निरंतर विभूषित वामभागम नारायण प्रिय मदापहारम वाराणसी पुरपतिम भज विश्वनाथ। जपम नैव पूजाम नतो हम सदा सर्वदा शंभुतुभ्यम जरा जन्म दुःखौगतातप्यमानम प्रभो पाहि आप प्रणमामि शंभो। उपस्थित महानुभाव, मंच पर और इस सभागार में इस ऐतिहासिक स्थान पे एकत्रित, मैं सर्वप्रथम तो विश्वनाथ जी को बधाई देता हूँ कि ये हमें विश्वनाथ जी के चरणों में ले आए। अद्भुत व्यक्ति हैं, इन्होंने क्या क्या कार्य किए मुझे कहने की आवश्यकता नहीं। डॉक्टर विश्वनाथ कराट, चेयरमैन of the MIT World Peace University, the most remarkable institution, Rahul Karan, Executive President, other office bearers of the society, distinguished speakers on the dais, many of whom I had known for many years, assembled members of the audience drawn from many nations and cultures, representatives of the press, students and friends. It is a great privilege to be here in this holy city of Varanasi, with which I was very closely associated for 15 years as Chancellor of the great Banaras Hindu University, founded by Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, one of our most reputed freedom fighters, intellectuals and spiritual leaders. And we are meeting in the Vishwanath temple after it has been in a way reorganized and transformed by the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Bhai Modi, who is to be congratulated for what he's been doing to further our religious places. In our mythology, the sacred river Ganga issues from the locks of Lord Shiva, and now that all the obstructions between them have been removed, there is a direct access to the temple from Ganga Ghat. I pray to Lord Shiva that this parliament of science, religion, spirituality and philosophy will help in spreading the message of peace and harmony in a troubled world. The area we are addressing is one on which hundreds if not thousands of books have been written. But I am grateful to have the opportunity to address this important parliament which has brought together scholars and thinkers from around the world. As has been said, India is par excellence the land of religion. 4 of the world's great religions were born here: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism and Sikhism, while 5 have come to us from West Asia and have flourished here for many centuries: Christianity, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, Islam and the Baha'i faith, while the 3 East Asian religions, Confucianism, Shintoism and Taoism have grown and flourished in China and Japan. I am aware that religion is not the same as philosophy, but for us in Asia, there has always been a close linkage between the two. We do not look upon philosophy, philosophia in the Greek terminology, love of wisdom, as merely an intellectual exercise, but rather as a quest for wisdom and enlightenment. It is in this context that I venture to place before this distinguished audience a set of 5 sutras, cryptic statements compressing a wealth of meaning based essentially on the Vedantic philosophy, which between them give us a roadmap for addressing the multiple problems that humanity faces today. In my view, a philosophy is really valid only if it helps us here and now to cope with the multiple challenges of life. Otherwise, it becomes merely an academic and archival exercise for students and research scholars. Philosophy should be a vibrant and dynamic exercise that helps us to maximize our inner and outer capacities during our life on earth. The first sutra I have chosen is from the Ishavasya Upanishad. Ishavasya vidam sarvam yat kin jagatyam jagat. This whole cosmos, not merely the tiny speck of dust that we call planet Earth, but the billions and billions of galaxies in the unending universe around us, are all illuminated by, inhabited by the same divine power. Whether it is the stately waltz of the galaxies or the frenetic rock and roll of subatomic particles, so powerfully symbolized in Shiva Nataraja, Lord of the cosmic dance, all owe their existence to the same divine force, known in the Upanishads as the Brahman. In a way, this represents a philosophical correlate for the unified field theory that scientists are looking for to explain all the multiple phenomena in the cosmos. This gives us a firm foundation to probe deeper into the power that subsumes all that exists, that has existed, and that will exist in the future. Flowing from this is a second sutra from the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hrideshe Tishtati. The divine power resides in the heart of all beings. This is tremendously important, because if the divinity was not seated in our hearts, there would be no way in which we could approach it or experience it. While all creatures have potential divinity, it is only with the emergence of the human race that for the first time there is a species on earth which is self-conscious and which can therefore embark on the spiritual quest. Each human being encapsulates a spark of the divine, known as the Atman, and fanning that spark into the blazing fire of spiritual realization is the true purpose of human life. Joining the Atman and the Brahman, in other words, raising our consciousness to a radically elevated trans-rational level of awareness, is the crux of the spiritual quest. The philosophy and methodology of this joining is what is known as yoga. Yoga comes from the same root as the English word yoke, meaning to join. In our tradition, there are numerous methodologies to bring about this union, but we can recognize 4 main pathways to join the Atman within and the Brahman without. The first is what is known as the Jnana Yoga, the way of wisdom. This involves clarifying and refining the mind so as to be able to discriminate between what is real and what is illusory. Sadasat Viveka. It could perhaps be compared to the way of Plato, who, as you will recall, held that all we see are shadows thrown on the wall of the cave in which we are seated. We see neither the objects themselves, far less the light that actually illumines them. The Jnana Yoga involves a study of scriptures, meditation and introspection, so that we develop the capacity to perceive the unchanging reality that lies behind all manifestation. The iconic Adi Shankaracharya and Sri Ramana Maharishi are outstanding representatives of the Jnana Yoga. The second main path is the Bhakti Yoga, the way of devotion. Please note these are separate paths. The first path is the way of jnana, the way of discrimination. The second path is the way of yoga, the way of devotion. It involves in effect falling in love with a personalized figure of the divine, as did the great bhakti saints, from the Nayanmars and Alvars in Tamil Nadu to the great Vaishnava devotees, Mirabai, Tulsidas, Surdas in central India, Sant Gyaneshwar and other great savants from Maharashtra, from Narsi Bhagat in Gujarat to Shankar Deva in Assam, and especially Sri Chaitanya in Bengal and Odisha. True bhakti involves a total surrender in love and devotion to one's chosen deity. In the West, it could be comparable to the great Christian devotees like St. Francis of Assisi, St. Teresa of Avila, and St. John of the Cross. In the Sufi tradition, we have Jalaluddin Rumi and Amir Khusro, whose devotion was directed to their gurus Shams Tabriz and Hazrat Nizamuddin. In India, the Bhakti movement had a tremendous impact in moving from the Devavani Sanskrit to the Lokavani regional languages, thus taking the message of the Upanishads right down to the common person. The third main path of union with the divine is Karma Yoga, the way of action. The key to this is to be found in the second verse of the Ishavasya Upanishad. Kurvaneveha karmani jiji visheshatam samah evam tvai nanyate tosti na karma lipyate nare. But it was particularly elaborated by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. The concept is that if work is undertaken in a spirit of selfless dedication to the divine, it can also be a powerful vehicle for spiritual realization. Living as we are in an era when escaping from the world into a mountain retreat is no longer a viable option, and each one of us has necessarily to involve ourselves in outer activities, the concept of Karma Yoga is particularly relevant. This was the path chosen by Swami Vivekananda when he set up the Ramakrishna Mission and was followed by many other such organizations. In the West, this would be the way of Martha, of good works, the way of Mother Teresa, and dedicated Christian mysteries. If Jnana Yoga is the way of the mind, Bhakti Yoga the way of the heart, and Karma Yoga the way of the hands, the fourth yoga is what is known as the Raj Yoga, the royal path, the way of the breath. This involves becoming aware of and then arousing the spiritual powers inherent in the human body itself. While this yoga is mentioned both in the Upanishads and the Gita, it is in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali that the whole concept is elaborated. What is now known as yoga around the world, thanks to Prime Minister Modi, who persuaded the United Nations to introduce an International Day of Yoga, is Hatha Yoga, physical asanas and postures, which in fact represent only a small portion of the Raja Yoga. Regulation and awareness of our breath, which is the vital link between our body and our consciousness, is the key concept of Raja Yoga. Sri Aurobindo in his extensive works has shed much light on the higher reaches of consciousness that can be achieved through yoga. I have mentioned these four paths of yoga simply to highlight the prime importance of joining the Atman and the Brahman in our own lifetimes. Please note, the Vedanta does not postpone illumination until after death. It stresses that it is here and now, that we should try and achieve the union. If we have not achieved it in our lifetimes, simply the act of dying will not bring us illumination. I should also add that these four yogas are not mutually exclusive. Each one of us can and in fact should try and partake to some extent in each one of these paths, concentrating mainly on the one that most appeals to us. We've got to use our minds, we've got to use our hearts, we've got to use our hands, and we've got to regulate our breath. So far I have covered first of the two sutras that I have chosen. Ishavasya Sarvam and Ishvara Sarvbhutanam Hriddeshi. the all-pervasive Brahman, the Atman within us, and the fourfold path of yoga to join the two. Let me now turn to the third and important well-known sutra from the Upanishads, which describes the human race as a single family, mentioned by many speakers, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Ayam nija paro vedi, gananam laguchetasam, udara charitanam tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is mine and that is yours, is a narrow and limited way of looking at objects. For those of the higher consciousness, Vasudha eva Kutumbakam, the world itself is a family. Extraordinary, thousands of years ago our rishis realized this. It is only in our own lifetimes that science and technology have actually given us the capacity to break out of the confines of our earth, reach the moon and explore planets and stars beyond. They have given us instant communications, the internet, television, and a vast array of technological instruments which have indeed made the world potentially a single unit. However, it is astonishing that thousands of years ago our seers had realized that in the final analysis the human race must be looked upon as a single family. The Upanishads describe the human race as Amritasya Putraha, children of immortality. Unfortunately, despite these great concepts and the recent technological breakthroughs, our minds are still mired in pre-global concepts. And this tension, in fact, is cause of much of the turmoil that we see in the world around us. If we ever to move towards a global society, what the poet Tennyson calls the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the world, we will have to move beyond our limited nationalisms and realize that in the final analysis we are all inhabitants of a small planet with strictly limited resources that we are rapidly destroying. The NASA photograph of planet Earth taken from outer space shows it as it really is, a tiny speck of light and life against the unending vastnesses of outer space, so beautiful and yet so fragile. This is Mother Earth, Bhavani Vasundhara, Gaia in the Greek tradition, which has nurtured consciousness up from the slime of the primeval ocean 2 billion years ago to where we are today. Unless we look upon the human race as a single family, we will surely end up by destroying both the natural and the human environment. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam has to be the key concept of the emerging global society. Today we are destroying this tiny planet because of our ignorance. The fourth sutra from the Rig Veda, Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one, the wise call it by many names. This is a very, very important concept at the heart of our civilization. Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one, the wise call it by many names. If Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is the keynote of the global society, this sutra is the keynote of the interfaith movement, which began in 1893 with the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago, where Swami Vivekananda made such a dramatic impact. The sutra points out that there are many paths to the divine articulated from time to time and from place to place by great seers, prophets and avatars. For anyone to assume that there is only one path to the divine is an absurdity. Who are we, creatures on a tiny speck of dust in the universe, to lay down that the illimitable splendor of the divine can appear only in one form, in one place or in one time? This is prima facie unacceptable. There are billions of planets in our galaxy and billions of galaxies in the infinite universe around us. How do we know when and where and in what form the divine force has revealed itself? On Earth itself, humanity has had numerous and varied experiences of engaging with the divine, which is why over a dozen great religions flourish around the world. I mentioned them, and there are hundreds of bypaths and further groups within each religion. While I can strongly hold that for me my path is the best, I have no right to impose this view on other people and to blow up, decapitate, torture or persecute those who do not follow my path. It is deeply disturbing that this fanaticism and hate-filled violence has most unfortunately raised its ugly head again in this century. What we thought had been firmly left behind since the Middle Ages has now reappeared with greatly enhanced technological capacities, thus in a way confirming Huntington's brilliant analysis on the clash of civilizations. I am particularly happy that my good friend Indresh Kumarji now heads the Muslim Rashtriya Manch. I happen to come from a Muslim majority state, and therefore it is very important that the large millions and millions of Muslims who live in this country have got to be looked upon as members of one family. We have already suffered once by the division, which created the greatest mass emigration in history. 1 crore people, 10 million people were unhoused and had to move. 1 million people lost their lives. We don't want that to happen. We've learnt a bitter lesson. We have now must to realize that if Ekam Sat Bahuda Vadanti, if it is true, then we've got to make efforts to help and integrate all the sections of society, particularly the so-called minorities, although there's so many Muslims you could hardly call them a minority, and Christians and other religions. The interfaith movement in fact is dedicated to the principle of the confluence of religions, of civilizations, not the clash of civilizations, to which India for thousands of years had made a major contribution. It seeks to bring together in a harmonious dialogue leaders of different religious persuasions and sects so that they can seek to better understand the essential teachings of each religion. If I may take you into confidence, I am now anchoring a serial by Sansad TV called Ekam Sat at my suggestion. And we have presented already all the people from different religions in India. I am the host, I anchor it. It's been going on for 3 months now. आप लोग उसको सुन सकते हैं. संसद नामक टीवी पे एक सीरियल चल रहा है जिसका अनुमान है एकम सत, मेरे ही सुझाव पे. उसमें हमने प्रत्येक जो धर्म है उन धर्म के अवलंबी, उन धर्म की जहाँ जो प्रतिष्ठित व्यक्ति हैं, जो बुद्धिजीवी हैं, उनको हमने प्रस्तुत किया है ताकि वो अपने अपने धर्म की बात करें और अपने धर्म की जो विशेषताएं हैं उनको हमारे सामने रखें. तो वो कार्यक्रम चल रहा है. There are many issues upon which various religions of the world hold largely similar views. Let's not get into theology. Half the world believes in rebirth, half the world doesn't. Now, we can go on arguing for centuries about, we don't have to argue those sort of theological issues. But they include protecting and nurturing the natural environment, helping the poor and needy, ensuring the dignity and security of women and so on. Since 1893, numerous interfaith organizations have come into being, including the Temple of Understanding India Forum, of which I am president. We have held a series of meetings and seminars and other programs to spread the message of Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vedanti. I must admit, however, that unlike the environmental movement, which has moved rapidly to the center of human concerns, the interfaith movement is still peripheral. I suggest that all those of us who are involved in the philosophical arena should pay special attention to this aspect of the contemporary human condition. The fourth and last sutra that I am going to put before you is a prayer, Bahujana Sutaya Bahujana Hitaya. May everybody be happy, may everybody be healthy. What greater prayer can there be of that? I was asking my communist friends, there's many definitions of communism, from Fabian socialism to Marxism, Leninism to Maoism and Shiism and so on. But this simple sloka, Sarvepi Sukhina Santu, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kashit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. May all beings be happy. May all beings be without disease. May all beings perceive auspicious sights. May no one have to undergo suffering. What greater ideal can there be than that? And therefore it's important that we understand that this highly idealistic concept shows that Vedanta includes special emphasis on improving the lot of every human being. In fact, the Vedas go one step further and speak of the welfare of animals and trees, rivers and oceans, mountains and forests. Why do we have this tradition? ये देवी का वन है, ये शिव जी की बावली है, so that we revere our natural environment. Clearly, the ancient rishis were aware that if we destroy the natural environment, sooner or later the human environment will also be destroyed. This has been brought home to us sharply over the last few years, and now there is a last-ditch attempt to reverse the lethal process of global warming that now threatens to overwhelm the earth. Taken together, I submit that these 5 sutras that I have placed before you, Isha Vaksamitam Sarvam, the all-pervasive divine, Atman in every Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hiddeshe Tishti, the Lord resides in all beings. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is a family. Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti, the truth is one, the wise call it by many names. And Bahujana Sukhaya, Bahujana Hitaya. May all be healthy and may all be wealthy. These 5 sutras taken together represent a holistic philosophy in contradistinction to the highly acquisitive, violent, contemporary society that we see around us, where corruption flourishes because of greed. Gandhiji once said, there is enough for every person's need, but not enough for one person's greed. So this sort of situation which we today have, this will finally destroy the earth. We have to turn our minds around. And I have tried to present an alternative holistic philosophy which could perhaps help us in the very difficult task that we have before us. And that is to create a new society, a new world. We've got to arise and awake. As the Katha tells us, Uttishtata Jagrata Prapya Varar Nivotata Shurasya Dhara Nishita Duratya Durgam Pathasat Kavayo Vidanti. We have to arise and awake and walk across the razor-edged path. There are no soft options left, friends, either for individual realization or for collective emancipation. We've got to go across that difficult and dangerous path towards our goal. And what is our goal? Our goal is a new society, a new global society, a new world, a new consciousness, a new level of awareness, a new human civilization. That is what is needed in the present crisis, and that is the message